Tell me, first of all, why you and your colleagues chose to study interactive media.
One reason we chose to study interactive media is because it's becoming increasingly common for young children to use interactive media. And also the research suggests really young kids learn better from real life experiences than video. And we wondered if interactive media might be somewhere in the middle.
When you say interactive media, do you mean just tablets, or is it a combination of a couple of different things?
The most common interactive media for really young kids is touchscreen apps and games.
If you could tell me what your hypothesis was and what you and your colleagues looked at.
We expected to find that really young children would learn better from interactive than non-interactive media. So for example, playing with an app or game than watching video. We find the results are mixed. It's not as clear-cut as that.
So tell me how you went about studying this.
Most often we study this by having children either watch a video that we created in the lab to teach, for example, a new word, or to play a game where they have to transfer what they've learned to a real life situation. Some children just watch the video without interacting, and other children interact with the screen in some way. So we might say, watch this thing or touch this thing.
How many kids were involved in that study? How did you go about studying the question with those particular students?
We had a pair of studies. We had just over 100 children, almost 120 children in the first one. We were looking at word learning from interactive versus non-interactive video. We had 3 different groups. One group of children watched just video, non-interactive video, where we tried to teach them a word for a new object they hadn't seen before. Another group were instructed to just touch the screen to see that object, so they could touch anywhere they wanted. And a third group were instructed to touch the box to see what was inside, and then we pulled out the object. So really simple interactivity. These aren't complex games. And we found that the younger 2-year-olds in that study learned better from touching the box, touching a specific thing on the screen, than from just watching a non-interactive video.
So the kids who learned best, was it both real world objects and the interactive video? And can you tell me a little bit about that?
So in every case, we're testing how well children can learn from the screen and transfer that to real objects. So we might show them the object on the screen and then test their word learning with the real object. And that's what's particularly difficult for young kids.
What do your findings suggest?
Generally, toddlers, these sort of 2-year-old, year and a half to the end of the 2-year period, these children have a really hard time transferring information from screen to real life, so jumping from the screen to the real objects. So that tends to be pretty challenging. For some children in some situations, interacting with the screen helps their ability, helps them to jump the screen from screen to real life.
What does this suggest for educational apps and for parents who have these tablets?
The implications we have so far are that preschool age children, like the 3 to 5 year bracket, can learn from video just as well as an interactive app. And in fact, in some cases, they might learn better from video. If it's a really challenging new concept, then just watching a video might help them learn more than interacting with something that requires them to interact while also learning. For the younger children, for infants and toddlers, it's possible they'll learn better from interactive versus non-interactive. So they might learn more from interacting with a really simple app than from watching a video. But of course, it depends on how complex the app is.
What are some tips for parents from this research?
One of the big takeaways from the research is that younger children will learn more in any situation if they're interacting with a more knowledgeable partner, so a parent or a teacher or older child. So that's true whether it's video or real life things or interactive apps. Another takeaway for screen media is that younger kids might learn better with interactive media if it's well designed and age appropriate. So one thing to look for is whether the interactivity supports the learning. So are they interacting in a way that helps them learn the information better, or is the interactivity just secondary bells and whistles that make it fun and engaging, but not necessarily more educational? So strategic use of interactivity is really important.
For parents who are looking, how can they tell if it's something that's well designed or will work for these purposes?
So it's hard for parents to know what works because the research isn't always available, and there's not that much research out there for interactive media. Some of the things that will probably work better than others are looking for apps that have a clear educational goal, and that could be an academic skill like word learning or numbers, but it could also be more of a creative goal. So apps that allow children to play and explore in a semi-structured experience. So maybe allowing them to make choices and try out different ideas and see what happens. So those kinds of things have the potential to be beneficial. Things that have a lot of advertising, obviously we don't typically recommend for young children. Things that are really complex that children have a hard time figuring out probably won't help them very much. Things that are just drill and skill, rote learning, practicing the same thing over and over again might help for something really specific, but probably won't be generalizable.
This is a challenge for some families to decide whether or not they're going to allow tablet use and then to decide how much and what kind. From the families you talk to, from the research you've done, does it seem like it's one of those issues where the jury's still out?
I think the jury's out for some specific questions, but by and large, the research suggests that if there's any harm in screen media time, if there's a reliable negative impact of screen media, it's at the really high levels of screen exposure. I don't know of any research that suggests a few minutes a day, 15 minutes a day has any long-term harm. And it's also really clear that children will get the most out of it if they're using media together with other people. So to the extent that parents are able to sit down and play a game with their children on a touchscreen, for example, those children are likely to benefit much more than if they're playing by themselves.
So it's not a babysitter. You don't just hand the child the tablet and walk away in a best case scenario.
In a best case scenario, it's not always possible for parents to be on their children every second of the day, and we wouldn't want them to be. It's good for children to have a chance to engage in free, unstructured play. So that's not necessarily a problem, as long as it's balanced with other activities like playing with real objects and playing outdoors.
Is there anything I didn't ask you, Heather, about this research that you would want people to know?
Another thing that's really clear from the research is that we need to consider the context in which this is happening. So a child watching videos for hours a day versus a child playing a game with a parent versus reading an ebook together versus playing a game with other children that's collaborative and helps with problem solving. Those are really different contexts. So it's really important for us to think about not just how much screen time children have and get away from that issue and think more about what they're doing, with whom they're doing it, how they're engaging in media.
You worked with some of the kids in a way, much like the researchers did work during the study. Can you just describe for us what you did and what the child was instructed to do and the responses you saw?
As a warm-up, we just played a game that's fun and engaging and interacted with children and let them play however they like to play. Then once we got into the actual study, in this particular case, we showed them a video of an actress on the screen pulling objects out of a box and saying, look at this one, or look at the gazzer, which is an object they've never seen before. After they see the videos, then we put the tablet away and bring out the real objects so they have a chance to interact with them. And there we're looking at whether they imitate what the actress did with the object. And then we ask them, for example, which one was the gazzer, to see if they can identify which object was named.
Are they able to most of the time?
It varies a lot by age. So older kids obviously are much better at this kind of thing than younger children. And we did find in studies like this, it depends on whether they're just watching the video or whether they're interacting with it.
What is your area? Is it developmental psychology? Is it human development?
I'm in the Human Development and Family Studies department. My degree is in developmental psychology.
And just a little bit about your background, where you got your undergraduate degree, master's, and advanced degrees.
I got my undergraduate degree in psychology from the University of New Hampshire in Durham, and I got my master's degree, PhD, and postdoctoral training at the University of Massachusetts in developmental psychology.